It's November 6th. Yesterday was the big election, and today we have a special podcast on our Ever Onward podcast. We have Todd Cranney. He's the founder of Riverwood Strategies here in Boise. Longtime political strategist nationally. Good friend. Can't wait to catch up with him and find out his thoughts on yesterday. Tonn, thanks for coming on the update again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We've had a heck of a week, buddy.
Has it only been a week? It feels like a month.
Yeah, I mean, we're clipping along, enjoying life, and then all of a sudden the Statesman writes an article about our downtown building. And
unbelievable. It's actually unbelievable.
Isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to get on here and just but I want to use this opportunity to just talk about it. It's disturbing in today's world that someone can just write something that doesn't have facts or stuff to it. So we're doing our downtown ICCU building.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of, we've got a residential tower, we got an office tower. We're trying to convert it from multifamily to condos, which we did a market study. That's history behind it. We did a market study and boom, this is the way to go. So in January, we go into the city of Boise, and you thank the good Lord, Tonn, that you are...
Meaning 10 months ago.
10 months ago. But what I love about you is you come from a legal background, right? Litigator.
Yep.
Extraordinaire. Then you come here and so you got all these notes and all the meetings, and you're doing all the things just the way it's supposed to be done.
Well, you document everything.
You document everything, and basically tell us briefly the story.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, it's disappointing, right? Because we document the approvals that we've gotten to go from 100 units down to just 69 units. That's it. I mean, think about it, like the exterior of the building doesn't change. Nothing changes except for you lose 30 units. And
the planning director tells you this is better for us, it's better for the city, it's better for the neighbors, you're done. You don't need to do anything.
Yeah, documented for several months in different meetings. And of course, look, it's not the city of Boise's fault that he left, right? He leaves town.
He leaves in March.
Yeah.
You go meet with him when he leaves and says, hey, I just want to make sure we're good. New guy comes in, and then somehow the email to the Statesman is, we haven't put in an application yet.
Yeah, we haven't put in an application yet. And not to get too deep in the philosophy of it, but I'm reading this book, and Carl Bernstein, of course, the famous American journalist who helped uncover Watergate, he said the duty of a journalist is to report truth.
Yeah. And
truth is not found in opinion. He said truth is found in the evidence. And in this case, I mean, that's a direct quote. And in this case, you just think about it, and look, the city's great. The city's working with us, but for the Idaho Statesman to report something that, it doesn't appear that they're even seeking for truth. They're just writing an opinion.
And then you got neighbors, which are just out. They didn't want the height of the building from the beginning. Right. They're mad. They're upset. They're watching everything. They complain about lots of things. And listen, we're trying to be good neighbors at all times. Why wouldn't we? Anyway, I wanted to get on to just say, hey, this was not right, and that's our update this week.
That's our update. But we'll work through it with everything. The irony of it all is the neighbors are getting exactly what they wanted at the end of the day.
It's exactly what they testified and wanted.
That's what they wanted.
And man, I love the quote.
Yeah,
dude, I love the fact that you're just spitting fire, man.
Well, we try to document. We try to do our homework, and it's nice when others do the same.
Hey, plus publicly, I want to just tell you thanks. We've been burning it at both ends, and couldn't do it without you, buddy. Thanks for coming
Tommy.
on today.
Thanks for everything.
Todd Cranney.
What's up?
Thanks for coming on.
Good to be here again. I'm surprised you invited me back.
Oh my gosh. You're the smartest. First of all, you get sick of me texting you because for those, you've been on here before, we'll do your intro, but you're I don't know anyone else in Idaho, and this is not hyperbole. I don't know anyone else that worked on presidential campaigns nationally. All these places that we only know in theory from watching the maps on TV. You've been to most of those places. You lived the life that we just all, we watched it on TV. You did it, right? Yeah. So you worked on several national campaigns. And so I text you all the time saying, hey, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And the last time I text you was at 5 p.m. yesterday. I know it was at 5 because I was meeting my daughter at 5 to help her go into the polls. Yep. She just wanted to make sure didn't want to be alone. And so I met Chloe there. And I was on my way, and I'm like, what's going to happen? And you're like, man, if anyone tells you they know what's going to happen, they're lying.
Yeah, I did say that. And everyone now knows what was going to happen. I mean, if you would have asked me a week ago, I would have told you I thought what happened last night was going to happen. But over the last week or so, like, it just really looked like the race was tightening, and there was a lot of things happening that were concerning to me in terms of what was going to actually happen. And so I'm not going to lie, over the last couple of days particularly, I was like, oh, if you put a gun to my head, I would definitely still stick with Trump winning. But I was really nervous kind of because they got a little bit off message in my view over the final week.
He had a horrible week.
He did. But
he lights himself on fire, and then I think that's why it was so unknown, because that last week was so bad.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to what I should have, I was thinking this in my mind. I should have just stuck in my mind with what my gut was already telling me, because I've said this before, it didn't really matter what Trump was saying. Like, that, the cake was baked there. It was already baked in. So what was really important was what was happening on the paid media in each of these swing states. And they were totally on message there. And this is the best run campaign. I said this last time, and I stand by it. It's the best run campaign.
Third time, and you've told me since the beginning he's got true pros.
Absolutely.
And he's mostly listening to them.
And he mostly listened to them. I mean, he's going to do what he's going to do, and that's what's made him successful. You can't argue with it in a lot of ways. Some people will, obviously, for other reasons, but this time he's listened and he's followed a script. And again, I think a lot of it was baked in, and they were very on message with their paid media. Very on message.
Like, when we do these things, I don't know what you're going to answer, first of all.
Yeah.
Okay.
You never know what I'm going to answer with me, right?
I don't. But I'm always wait with it. But I truly do think over, like, in my life, like, you're the smartest political guy I know. So let me ask you some questions.
You need to meet more people, but
that's not true. But you look at what happened, and I don't know how to answer this question. For me as a Republican, thinking of our country and thinking of the things that matter to me, matter to my family, matter to us here in Idaho, the same things are true for me over the last decade, right? And then you had what was supposed to be the red wave 2 years ago, which was a disaster.
Yep.
It was a disaster. Like, it was going to be a red wave, and the whole country's feeling this way, and it's going in the wrong direction, and it just didn't happen. So I like going into this election, I'm like, well, those facts are the same. Like, the border stuff, it was all the same stuff that was going on. Why was it different this time? So here's my question. That's a long preamble. Was it that the country embraced kind of what he stood for and policies, and hey, let's the average day working American across all demographics is behind Trump? Or was it that she was so bad?
Well, I think it's a combination of things, to be quite frank with you. First of all, I think that last night really reaffirmed our country is center right. And you see it in the policies. I just think that, for all the talk about how crazy the far right is of the Republican Party, which the mainstream media, which I think is not correct, because they're not really mainstream.
I think they're destroyed after this, don't you think?
Yeah, well, they should be, because at the end of the day, again, they highlight everything that goes wrong with whatever happens on the far right. What they don't talk about is what's going on the far left, and the policies of the far left that I think if you saw it last night, they were repudiated. And Trump ran against those policies. And again, I think part of what's going on here is that if you think about 16, 20, and 24, in 16, it was about Trump versus Hillary. Hillary was not well liked. Trump was a surprise. 20 was a challenge for Trump because he was, I think at that point, honestly, things were going well. And I think everyone then started focusing on some ancillary things about maybe his style and what he says and COVID and all these other sorts of things. And so Biden wins. Well, guess what this time happened in 2024? Everyone's pretty focused on the main event, which is the economy, inflation, which really has hurt a lot of people. And you saw it. And you saw it with him overperforming with minorities. Again, his numbers he didn't win them, but his coalition built with improvement of black voters, with Latino voters. He won Latino men. There's some argument there, but he's either won them or was close to winning them, which has never happened. And so those improvements are all happening because if you think about the issue that they care about, what do they care about? They care about the economy, inflation particularly, which has hurt everyone. They're worse off than they were 4 years ago. They care about the border. And again, I want to be really clear here. Everyone talks about immigration. It's not immigration. It's the border. It's securing the border. They care about that. All voters do. And you see that particularly across the board. And then they care about crime. So again, I go back to Trump had the right message. And again, this time around, they didn't care about his sideshow stuff. They don't really care. What they care about, again, voters generally vote their self-interest.
Yeah.
And the most self-interested thing they could do was vote for Donald Trump. And again, this country, in my view, is still fundamentally center-right. And one of the stories that's not told is, let's go into these issues of the liberal, progressive left. They do not represent swing voters in Wisconsin, Michigan,
the other
et
thing
cetera.
that got crazy was the media.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I saw on Sunday Oprah, like saying this will be if you don't vote for the Democrats, this will be the last election you may ever vote in.
Yeah.
I mean, the hyperbole and the stuff out of it was
And it didn't work.
And it doesn't work.
Didn't work.
Do you think there's ever a return to journalism as we thought, or is it just because they're just so bought into the money behind them that it just doesn't matter, or what is it?
Well, I think it's a combination of the media that's going on right now. First of all, the media is so bifurcated now that it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the mainstream, whatever they call them. Again, they're not mainstream. They're not mainstream at all. They're liberal media. People can say whatever they want. Trump had it right. Fake news, it is fake news. There's again, you got to be careful here. There are some really good journalists who do very good work. But it takes a lot of work for someone like you and I to sort through who really is giving you facts, who's giving their opinion, and the separation between editorial content and reporting content. It's just a fine line. And so now the challenge we have is it's just bifurcated. There's so many other sources. And you saw Trump use that to his advantage at the end. Podcasts are a big deal now. There's just so many other ways to reach voters through media channels than ever before. And Trump was really smart at how he did that. And he particularly targeted younger men and black men, younger. And he did a great job of how he did that and how he communicated. And some of those longer form, like a Joe Rogan interview, if you watch the Donald Trump, if you listen to him do that, that's when it's like, oh, you listen to one of his rallies, I'm not so sure. That's just me talking.
Yeah,
but you listen to him on Joe Rogan,
and I will tell you,
he did a great job.
More powerful. So I'm a longtime Rogan listener, right? And love the format. Thought the president's was good. I thought J.D. Vance on Rogan was.
I thought he was even better.
I mean, I listened to every, and my opinion of J.D. Vance changed.
Yeah.
Just because I've never heard him in a long format. And when you get in a long format and you actually get what's in someone's head and their heart, and you get more of a, who is this guy? It was great.
And you think about J.D. Vance and what the mainstream media did to him as soon as he became the VP nominee. It's like, they just
the
take
whole couch thing.
They
and
just take things and put it out of context. Again, I'm not saying there's fair criticism, but again, the reality of it, like you said, is that that's what the new modern media and opportunities out there. Now, there's a flip side of that, because part of the challenge running into the media environment we live in now is there are also people out there who are putting out information and they're just trying to make money off you. Well, they want more clicks, they want more likes, they want more whatever,
sure.
And they're making a ton of money off you, and they're not really giving you any sort of factual information, in my view. So there's two sides of the coin there, but again, the mainstream piece, they've completely killed themselves. And again, I think the challenge, I think Trump and his team did a great job. They understood that. They understood how to get around that. And some of the thing, Trump's philosophy really is, it really is no publicity is bad publicity. Like if he's in the news and he's in the conversation, and he can't live without it in some ways, which is part of his strength and his weaknesses, because if he would have just stayed out of the way, take Vance, for example. Vance in the debate prosecuted an amazing case that I thought, I actually listened to it, and I'm like, man, this sounds like a real presidential debate versus what I listened to when I watched the other presidential debate. And that's what I would say about Trump, is if Trump would have done what Vance did in the debate, then I think Trump would have won. This thing would have been put away a lot sooner.
I mean, I don't know how many times I sit there listening to him and I just say one thing. Say one, just one thing presidential, or one thing that reaches out to middle America.
And that's where the 30-second ads that they had, that's what they did. They made it very clear about,
they did it for him.
Were you better off 4 years ago or now? And it was very succinct, and they did a good job.
So I want to get, because of time, I want to make sure we hit all of this, because I want to get back to Idaho too. So the other thing that happened last night is at about 11 o'clock, I'm like, oh man, the Senate, and it wasn't until about then when they started going through the maps and what was going to happen, and just how impressive the demographics were of who was voting and how they were voting. I thought, we're going to win. We're going to, the Republicans are going to take the Senate in a big way.
Yep.
That is significant. And then I don't know if officially I've been doing stuff all day. I don't know. Is the House declared?
No, not yet. The House is still going to take a couple of days, although there's more optimism that the House is going to stay Republican. Very tight margins there, but again, that'd be the trifecta. I was very confident in the Senate. Now I've been doing a lot of Senate work.
I know
so
that, and for people listening,
so I was
for years you've been very involved in the Senate Senate fund.
Yep.
The PAC that goes around and really targets races that are,
and the House as well. I'm not this cycle, but in multiple cycles before. But the Senate, I've been pretty confident about for quite some time now. We thanks to Trump and the surge here at the end of the red wave, we've seen some places that we didn't think we thought could get there, but we're going to require Trump getting there. And so ultimately, it's kind of a bummer because we're almost there. I mean, we felt very confident we'd win back Montana and West Virginia. Ohio, we felt decent about, and we did pull that one off. I think my worry was all the upper Midwest states were all kind of in play, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. It looks like we're going to win Pennsylvania, but I'm not sure we're going to get there in Michigan and
the Hovde race.
The Hovde race is really close. It's within a point, right? And that's Wisconsin. Rogers,
he's a great guy.
He's great.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, and that was just a little more
great candidates, right?
Great candidates. We had 3 great candidates in the upper Midwest. Tim Sheehy was a great candidate. Bernie Moreno, maybe a little different conversation, but Trump pulled him through there, and that was what we always figured would happen. He was going to win Ohio pretty big. And then, we're still waiting to see what happens with Sam Brown in Nevada. I mean, Nevada is really tight. Trump won that big. Trump could pull Sam Brown along there. It's too close to call. It'll be a couple days, I think, before we know there. But right now we're at 53. They haven't called Pennsylvania yet, but I'm very confident we're going to get Pennsylvania. So the real question is we're going to get 54. I don't think we're going to get there in Michigan and Wisconsin, unfortunately, which is really a sad thing because they'd be 2 great senators and it would give your margins better. But the margins matter. I mean, 53 to 54 is a big deal. I think the House is going to be close. It's going to be a 5-6 seat deal. But I'm more confident now than I was a couple of days ago that we're going to hold the House, but it's going to be close, so we'll see how it goes. I also think, though, the nice thing about that is it's been hard for the House to get anything done with that sort of margin, so you're like, can they get anything done? Well, I think with Trump being president, they can probably get some things done because I don't think there's going to be as many people eager to buck Trump as they were in the past.
So one of the things that is really hard in the world we live in is I've got lots of friends and family that are Democrats, and they're this is not today is a sad day for a lot of people.
For sure.
You look at the thing, we're very divided as a country, 50-50. And although the polarization of Donald Trump, his personality, his, just stuff, right? It's just there. Policy-wise, conservative Republican policy is why I'm what I am. And I love policy. I love...
Yep.
You look at our biggest issues, which I do think are immigration, I think tax policy, I think the national debt, I think entitlements, I think of really big things. Here's the question. Now that when Trump came in the first time, there was this Republican kind of establishment or established policy wing of policy wonks that were like dying to get someone in office after so much Democrat control to do Republican policy in the nation, and I think that was there. Is that apparatus exist anymore in the country? What happens now that you do control the executive branch and the House? Do you see that there? Is that apparatus gone?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know for sure. I think there is enough there because there's enough institutional memory. I think Idaho's going to play a huge role in that, and that's going to be Senator Crapo, who's going to be the chairman of the Finance Committee, which is the most powerful committee on the Hill.
You think of Idaho with Crapo and Risch.
And then Risch is going to be chair of foreign relations. And then you're going to have, Congressman Simpson is one of the senior appropriators. And then Russ Fulcher, Congressman Fulcher is higher up on the Energy Committee. They got a lot going on.
Can you hit on this? Like, I think for a lot of us that don't pay attention too much, we are in a great position as a state, an influential position because of their tenure and because of who they are and their respect back there. But there's really a few big committees back there, and Idaho will lead 2 of them.
They will. They're going to lead finance, which touches everything from taxes to the spend side, as you name it. And then foreign relations is going to be Senator Risch. I'm pretty sure he's going to take back over as chairman of that. And then, appropriations-wise on the House side, Congressman Simpson is the senior appropriator over the EPA, and other interior pieces that are very important to Idaho. And he's been very important to the INL and all these other things. He's done a ton of things. So all three of these guys, and then Congressman Fulcher's now had enough time back there where he's built some great relationships, and he's made a lot of progress, and he serves on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is a very influential committee, and I think he's also on Resources, which is a very big deal to Idaho. They all have a great relationship with Trump, particularly Senator Crapo and Senator Risch, but also Congressman Simpson and Congressman Fulcher. And so, again, I think what's going to happen here is people are going to respond to Trump quite a bit more than even when he came in. But, you know, if it was like last time, Trump also listened pretty well, and he had some pretty good guys. Like, I think, you know, who's the Treasury Secretary, who's going to be kind of his cabinet posts. They were really good, and they worked really well with guys like Senator Crapo, like Senator Risch, and listened and worked really well. I think you're going to see that because, again, he comes in with a huge mandate. And I think he comes in with a mandate to get some things done. And I think one of the biggest priorities is an extension of his biggest piece of work that he did for us, which is were the tax cuts.
Yeah.
And that's a long conversation for a different day, but it's a big deal.
I also think J.D. Vance being a senator, understanding the legislative process,
I think it helps
being
a lot.
there is going to be very helpful.
I think it helps a lot, and he also has a lot of relationships a little bit with more of the more right piece of the puzzle. So that helps. I think that helps build those relationships and brings everyone together a little bit better. I hope.
Okay, can we come back to Idaho?
Yeah.
So you know, one of the things that you've told me for a year now is the whole Prop 1 thing, the Democrats taking over the Republican elections through this ballot initiative was really stupid. And that, like almost word for word what you said a little more with a little more color, a little more energy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be diplomatic here. I mean,
You
look,
don't need to be diplomatic.
You know, this is one where this was very much not.
Why do you need to be diplomatic?
Well, I mean, I've had client involved in this, but I mean, what I would say is that there's no surprise here, like none. I think that the margin was a little bit surprising, although I knew.
So before let's level set this, right?
Yes.
Prop 1 was a voter initiative, ballot initiative, got on the ballot to basically open the primaries and do ranked choice voting, which is that's where all the controversy
and that's
came
where
in,
the problem. That's
and
where the problem became a really big problem, which
you told them from day one,
which was predictable. Yes,
like from day one, second one, don't do this.
Yes,
your point was ranked choice voting is a really stupid idea, and having this being led by Democrats taking over is not a good idea. I'll say it if you don't want to say it.
Well, my point was that I don't care agnostic to the policy. You can argue whether you like RCV or not. It was going to get killed, and it did. So I was right politically. I like the open primary piece, and that's a different conversation in my view. But the problem is they put it together, and it got killed, and it got killed handily. And I think you should give. I think there's a lot of big props here to go to Speaker Moyle, who helped lead the charge in knocking it down. And again, the biggest concerns that I've heard from everyone is all about the RCV piece. There's really not a lot of concern about the open primary piece, which I think has a lot of merit. And I think voters would think it's got a lot of merit, but it all came down to the RCV piece, which again, very predictable. Knew that was going to happen. Didn't take a rocket scientist to say that, by the way.
I'm trying to make you a rocket scientist.
Well,
you're telling me you didn't
it
be
wasn't,
that smart. But,
it wasn't.
But what I love about it is from the very first call you made to me, I don't know when it was, a year and a half ago,
and
maybe even longer than that.
Yeah, and our idea, our concept that we talked to you about was the idea of open primaries. Nothing to do with the RCV piece. So again, people can argue whatever they want. Again, I think a lot of credit goes to Speaker Moyle. A lot of credit goes to Frank Vandersloot. They led the charge. They knocked it down. It was very predictable. I think there were a lot of people that were, eagerly worried about certain things, and I just think again, it's done, and it got smoked, and it got smoked very well. It's a Republican state. I mean, I don't. The math's the math. I mean, people have to understand that it's very hard. I mean, it's very hard to lead a coalition to win a race in a Republican state from the center, from the left. And no criticism to anyone, but it should have been common sense to people. And I just think people.
It's not criticism; it's common sense.
Yeah, and I think ultimately what it boils down to is, again, people wanted to use their heart instead of their head, and wanted what they wanted instead of what was going to actually happen. And so my job.
Every once in a while, I hear a little Bill Cranney, and
well,
I love it, man.
My job is not to. My job as a political consultant is to give you advice and tell you the facts, and then you got to make decisions, and people do what they want. But again, I don't think this was not a big shocker by any stretch of the imagination. It's unfortunate in my view because I think there could have been an opportunity on the open primary piece, which is very simple to understand, and voters could have really liked, even Republican voters. But it all was drowned out because it all became about RCV, and whether you like it or you don't like it, or whether you think it's the greatest policy in the world or you don't, it wasn't going anywhere. And everyone knew that, and anyone, again, with common sense knew that.
Awesome.
So
Legislative races
were actually really great for Republicans. I think, and again, I think Prop 1 inadvertently, but although I think Trump really drove the turnout there because people were really excited to get out and vote for Trump. And that also really doomed Prop 1's chances, which was, again, very predictable. But I think across the rest of the board, Republicans had made some really big gains. So Cody Galloway won the Senate seat back there.
I think Cody's great.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And so she took over, and that's a net seat gain.
That was not an easy race for her.
Not
either.
at all. Not at all.
Again, I think it's one of the things that we talk a lot about is you need a good candidate.
Yep.
And we need people that are critical thinkers, that are good candidates, that work hard,
absolutely.
but are smart, understand issues, and she was a fantastic candidate.
Well, the other thing is, I think this is a very important note. We don't know this yet because Lori Likely is ahead right now, but
how close is that race?
Very close, and I don't know yet. I mean, Blaine County still hasn't.
I really like Likely,
and Likely's gate, but it hasn't fully come in. She's ahead right now, but there's a big chunk of vote in Blaine. She could still lose barely, but we'll see. Hopefully, in my view, she wins. If she wins, the Democrats in the state will have only one state senator outside of the Boise area, which is James Rutke in Pocatello. One. They'll have two still in Sun Valley if Lori doesn't win. So if you're Democrats, like that's another point I made when they talked about this. They're all worried about they want RCV, they want. That's not their problem. Okay, they got problems. Their problem is, again, like I said earlier, downtown Boise.
I think from the beginning, focus on your problem, which is how do you strengthen your party.
Yeah, and
right?
my advice to them, if they're not trying to want to give Democrats advice, but what I've told them before is like, you're not going to win Oakley, Idaho with a bunch of North End Democrats, and that's fine if that's what North End of Boise wants. But they got to figure out if they want to be a party that can actually win in this state down the road. Their problem is very simple, which is numbers. There's so many Republicans, it doesn't matter. But over time, the independent number is going to. This is another reason why the open primary discussion is an important discussion in the long term. That's why I've thought about this. Is that independent number is going to keep growing, and so at some point in Idaho, not today, but 10 years from now, and I'm thinking 10, 15, 20 years from now, not today. Okay, today we're good. Republicans are going to be in control for quite some time for the next few years, no problem. But 10, 15 years from now, the state continues to grow. The independent number will grow. Republicans are going to have to attract independents with policies that make sense to independents and not just far-right Republicans in primaries. And so, again, Democrats have this problem, though. There's not enough of them. So first of all, they got to pray for another 10 years of demographic growth to help them more than anything. But even after that, if they're going to have a chance of electing someone statewide, no offense to Mary McLean, but there's no chance she could ever run statewide in this state and win. So they need to go find some new Cecil Anderses, and they need to go find some new John Evanses who have actually been. Well, where do you do that? You do not find that by pushing. And by the way, the primary system that they have is the same as ours. They elect the most progressive liberal, mostly, not always. There's some good Democrats. I don't want to cascade everyone. Be very clear, but they're electing a lot of very liberal Democrats who. No way could they ever be ready to run statewide and have any sort of chance to compete in this state because they're never going to appeal to anyone in Oakley, Idaho. So they got to start using their head here, and it isn't just about changing the system to RCV to game it. They've got to start thinking about, okay, hey, how do we recruit some candidates and some policies that matter instead of
just sitting here listening
else.
to you. It's like it's so interesting that neither side listens to each other. It's just
because
that makes so much sense.
The problem is both extremes. We got the tail wagging the dog way too much, and if they don't listen, they're going to lose some track. Now, again, the policies of the left, they got to really start rethinking this sort of stuff. I mean, that's to me the question they got to ask themselves.
So I haven't. I
want to give Democrats advice. By the way,
I did some channel surfing last night just to listen to what was coming back, and I got to tell you, there were a few people that were saying, "Hey, we got to really relook at what we're doing." And then there's a bunch of people that are like doubling down on the same stuff.
They want, yeah. So
and
that's pretty typical.
That's their deal, but
that's pretty typical.
Well,
the other, we
got a few more minutes. No,
okay.
We got a few more minutes.
Okay, good. Well, I think the other thing the other thing I'd point out is like if they're gonna, I'm not give Democrats advice, but what I would say about last night is, in all fairness to Kamala Harris, like she really had a millstone wrapped around her neck, and it was Joe Biden.
But she didn't pull it off.
And she didn't. But
I mean, don't you think the times that she was point blank asked, what would you do differently?
She should have,
like, not one thing.
Well, she's a terrible candidate. That's a separate conversation, but I totally agree. If I would have been the Democrats, what they should have done was they should have taken a beat. They should have had a mini primary.
Yep.
And they should have put a fresh face up to give themselves some sort of a chance. But they went the easy route, and then then Biden actually kind of pushed them that way by anointing Harris. And then for a while that worked, but at the end of the day, that was always why I felt good that Trump was going to win, because I just didn't. She had a hard ceiling. She was never going to get through because she could never separate herself from Biden on the economy, on the border, on any of these issues. And if he stayed on those issues like Trump's campaign did on paid media, he was going to win. But there are other issues that are underlying that I think are really important. And I don't mean to be mean about this, but the reality is some of these transgender issues that are they're going through here, like, again, girls, boys playing girls sports and stuff like that. I heard this candidate say this, and it was Tim Sheehy, actually, and I loved what he said, who's the new senator in Montana. He said, boys are boys, girls are girls, and that's the way it is. Look, some of this stuff, in my view, on the left is they're out of touch with the center right. They're not out of touch on the abortion issue. That's what actually flipped 2022 was the abortion issue. But this time around, again, go to these places like Trump's going to win Nevada. He's going to win Arizona. Both of them passed abortion initiatives. And you got to be careful with these initiatives because they say different things. So, I mean, that doesn't mean they're just opening up abortion, but they're
providing the exception.
Exactly.
They're loosening. They're less restrictive.
Yes, they're less restrictive. And you go across the board. Missouri did as well. And so that's what I'm saying is, like, again, you thought the abortion thing would be the whole thing in the world, but again, there's some of these cultural issues that I think Democrats are out of touch with reality on, in my view. And maybe that's my personal
Let me ask
belief.
a follow-up question to this, because if you look at polling, which I know you look at, I mean, that's what you live by, right? Is the numbers, right? Don't tell yourself a lie.
Yeah. You got to look at the
data. You got to look at the numbers.
Yep.
I think the data has told them a lot of this stuff.
It should.
On some of these issues.
And you're seeing it with, by the way, you know where you're seeing this and why the only reason I'm bringing the transgender thing, which I know is sensitive, and I have a great respect. I understand their situations and specifics. You got to really look at it. But when you go inside of this thing, you know where it's really showing up? It's showing up with black voters.
Yeah.
It's showing up with Latino voters. It's showing up, again, with obviously where he does really well, which is downscale voters. And downscale is a term we use for, a little less educated, lower income, blue collar is a better way probably to describe it. Again, that's where America still is. And the left is over here trying to, in my view, and this is a separate conversation, not a political analysis, trying to reprogram things in a way that's stupid. But any way you look at it, it's a losing electoral strategy for them. And it plays out when you go into the upper Midwest, big time. It plays out with in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but it plays out in Arizona and in Nevada with Latino voters and with black voters. They're not buying into this either. They're not buying into it. So both extremes are not helping their causes. So.
If there was one thing, if I were a Democrat this morning, I would be really worried, because I think part of the party is just tone deaf on what you just said. They are, and if you're a Republican, you're saying, hey, maybe we can make this tent bigger. Maybe there are people that are starting to look at, and maybe the people that were left behind, that were the old blue dog Democrats, and the people that, these people that have felt left by the party, they have. The Democrats have become more of the elitist, liberal kind of thing, and you've got all these people saying, "Well, hey, who's representing me?" And that's who the Republican Party, because of Donald Trump, is resonating with.
And I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, ultimately, that's what's really happening here. There's a realignment going on within the party, and again, the interesting thing too about the parties is both extremes are much more aligned on certain issues. They're more populist.
We talked about that last time.
So. But anyway, you look at it, what you just said there is absolutely right. There's a realignment going on, and no question is that people really felt like Trump is fighting for them. He represents them. And look, Trump is one of the most masterful politicians you've ever seen. He's an entertainer. He understands our culture. He understands our modern media mix. He understands better than most politicians, and he does things that a normal politician cannot do and never will be able to do. By the way,
I would put on top of that, he's got a work ethic.
He works hard. Yeah,
that is,
and a drive, and
it is a resilience.
Yep.
It is a drive. It is a fight. It is a dog mentality that is just.
Yeah, and this is what I'd say too, is final thing is that the right has a lot of things to work on too. And don't get me wrong, I understand the criticisms there, and there's things that say, and there's flat out people that are extreme on certain issues, and I don't disagree with that at all. But there's an opportunity here. Latino voters are the realignment of the whole thing in the future. If we can figure out this immigration thing, secure the border, but figure out immigration correctly, which, by the way, ag wants and a lot of people do need because it's
well, that's the irony of all immigration policy is that Republicans need it more or as much as anybody.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's probably one of the easiest things that we could have ever fixed. You go back to Mitt Romney's first 100-day document and read that.
But that's the thing. But that's the thing I think is lost a little bit in that issue. Not to go off on it, but is Trump isn't saying, I don't think he's anti-immigration at all. We got to secure the border.
Yeah.
It's like common sense.
It's step one of the whole thing.
But what I'm saying there politically is that's where a realignment can happen. If the Republican Party can figure out its rhetoric on this issue, they could dominate elections for quite some time post-Trump, because they're going to have to figure out a plan post-Trump, because Trump is a unique thing. He's not, you're going to have to be careful to try to recreate that thing.
Hey, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, it's great to
love
be
you,
with
brother.
you. Yeah, I love you. Thanks, brother.
Thanks,
man. See ya.